November 24th, 1971. A dreary afternoon in Portland, Oregon. A man in his mid-40s wearing a black business suit, a white shirt, and a thin black necktie walks to the counter of Northwest Orient Airlines. He purchases a one-way ticket for Flight 305, a short 30-minute hop to Seattle. The price, $20. He pays with a $20 bill and books his ticket under a simple, nondescript name, Dan Cooper. He boards the plane, takes seat 18C in the rear of the cabin, lights a Raleigh filter-tipped cigarette, and orders a bourbon and soda. Shortly after the 2:50 p.m. takeoff, as the plane climbs over Oregon, he catches the eye of flight attendant Florence Schaffner. He hands her a folded note. She smiles and drops it, unopened, into her purse, assuming it's just a lonely businessman's phone number, a common annoyance. He leans closer and speaks in a low, calm voice. "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Schaffner, stunned, reads the note written in neat, all caps with a felt-tip pen. She immediately goes to the cockpit to inform the flight crew. Captain William Scott, First Officer Bob Radizak, and Flight Engineer H.E. Anderson. Captain Scott instructs her to sit next to Cooper and do exactly as he says. He was described by all as quiet, polite, and well-spoken, not at all like the stereotype of a frantic hijacker. He then cracked open his briefcase, just enough for her to see 8 red cylinders, like dynamite, a large battery, and a mass of wires. The plane was a Boeing 727-100, tail number N467 US. A fact that would soon become critical. The man who would become a legend was now in full control. His name, Dan Cooper, would be mistakenly reported by a local journalist, James Long, as D.B. Cooper, and that is the name that stuck to him forever. His demands were precise and puzzling. First, $200,000, a staggering sum in 1971, equivalent to over $1.5 million today. He specified in negotiable American currency, which meant unmarked, non-sequential $20 bills, and he wanted it delivered in a knapsack. Second, he demanded 4 parachutes, specifically 2 primary civilian parachutes and 2 reserve chutes. The demand for civilian chutes was specific. He didn't want military-style static line chutes that open automatically. The FBI speculated this was a clever psychological move, ensuring authorities wouldn't give him sabotaged gear. Assuming he might force a crew member, or perhaps flight attendant Tina Mucklow, to jump with him. He also demanded food for the crew and a fuel truck ready in Seattle. For 2 agonizing hours, the plane circled Puget Sound, burning fuel, while authorities on the ground scrambled to comply. Northwest Orient's president, Donald Nyrop, authorized the ransom, reasoning it was cheaper than losing a $5 million jet and its passengers. FBI agents rushed to Seattle First National Bank, gathering the 10,000 individual $20 bills and frantically microfilming every single one, creating the Norjack serial number list. At 5:24 p.m., the 727 landed at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. Cooper, ever the tactician, ordered the plane to a remote, brightly lit part of the tarmac and demanded all window shades be drawn to prevent police snipers. A Northwest Orient employee, Al Lee, delivered the knapsack of cash and the parachutes. Cooper even paid his $18 drink tab before the exchange. In return, Cooper released all 36 passengers and flight attendant Florence Schaffner. He kept the cockpit crew and one attendant, Tina Mucklow, who stayed with him as his liaison. The plane was refueled, a process that took longer than Cooper liked, and he was described as getting agitated. He then revealed his new flight plan to Mexico City nonstop, but he gave the pilots, Captain Scott and First Officer Radizak, a strict and bizarre set of flight parameters. They were to fly low, no higher than 10,000 feet, and slow at 150 knots, just above stall speed. The wing flaps were to be set at 15 degrees. The landing gear was to remain down, and the cabin must remain unpressurized. These settings were dangerous, putting immense drag on the aircraft, burning fuel at an incredible rate, and bringing the 727 perilously close to a stall. At 7:40 p.m., Flight 305 took off again, heading south along a specific low-altitude airway known as Victor 23. Cooper's choice of aircraft was no accident. The Boeing 727 had a unique feature, a staircase at the very back, under the tail, called the aft air stair. This feature was common on 727s, as it allowed them to land at smaller, unprepared airfields without ground stairs. It was designed to be used on the ground, but crucially, it could be opened in mid-flight, a flaw in its design. This was his escape hatch. He ordered Tina Mucklow to show him how to operate it, then told her to go to the cockpit, close the curtain, and stay there. She was the last person to see Dan Cooper. His escape prompted a permanent change in aviation, as all 727s were soon retrofitted with a device known as the Cooper vane, a simple spring-loaded wedge that makes it physically impossible to open the aft stair while the plane is in the air. 2 Air Force F-106 fighter jets were scrambled from McChord Air Force Base and were shadowing the 727, but it was a useless gesture. The 727 was flying too low and too slow, forcing the jets to fly wide, fast circles, unable to maintain visual contact in the storm. At approximately 8 p.m., a warning light flashed in the cockpit, indicating the aft air stair was open. The crew felt a change in air pressure. Through the intercom, Captain Scott asked, "Is everything all right back there?" There was no answer. Then, at approximately 8:13 p.m., somewhere over the Lewis River Valley in southwestern Washington, the crew felt a sudden oscillating movement, a slight upward bump of the tail section. That was the moment Dan Cooper, holding a bag with $200,000, stepped off the stairs into a 100-mile-per-hour wind and vanished into the black, stormy night. The conditions he jumped into were not just bad. They were non-survivable. He jumped from 10,000 feet into a freezing rainstorm with winds over 100 miles per hour. The outside air temperature was -7 degrees Celsius with a wind chill of -57. He had no helmet, no goggles, no specialized gear, just a business suit and loafers. His landing zone was the dense, rugged, unforgiving wilderness of the Cascade Mountains. Specifically, the vast, dark forests around Lake Merwin and Mount St. Helens years before its famous eruption. A landscape of towering, 200-foot-tall Douglas firs, deep canyons, and raging rivers. The plane, with its crew unharmed, eventually landed in Reno. The FBI immediately launched Operation Norjack for Northwest hijacking, one of the most extensive and expensive manhunts in U.S. history. They dispatched 300 soldiers from Fort Lewis, along with FBI agents, local police, and helicopters, to conduct a massive grid-by-grid ground search of the 25-square-mile estimated jump zone. The initial search lasted 18 brutal days, but the terrain was nearly impassable. The case file grew to over 60 volumes, and over the years, the FBI would investigate and clear over 1,000 suspects. But in those first crucial months, they found absolutely nothing. No body, no parachute, not even a scrap of the nylon, no briefcase, no sign of the 10,000 $20 bills. It was as if the man and the money had simply evaporated into the air. The FBI was left with thousands of dead-end tips, and only the meager evidence left on the plane, his black clip-on tie, 8 Raleigh cigarette butts, and the 2 reserve parachutes he had left behind, one of which, crucially, was a non-functional dummy chute, sewn shut for training. The first piece of evidence was the black J.C. Penney clip-on tie Cooper left on Seat 18C. For decades, it yielded nothing, but in 2007, a group of independent citizen sleuths analyzed it with electron microscopy. They found thousands of microscopic particles, including rare earth elements like cerium and strontium sulfide, and, most importantly, particles of pure, unalloyed titanium. In 1971, this specific combination was incredibly rare, pointing to a high-tech aerospace manufacturing facility, specifically a place like Boeing's plant in Kent, Washington, which was using these exact materials for its brand new 747 and its supersonic transport project. This suggested Cooper wasn't just a random criminal, but was possibly an engineer, a manager, or a technician who knew the aerospace world inside and out. For 9 long, silent years, there was nothing. Then, in February 1980, an 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was digging a fire pit on a sandy riverbank called Tennebar along the Columbia River, miles downstream from the presumed jump zone. His hands brushed against 3 rotting bundles of cash, still held together by their original rubber bands. The FBI confirmed it was Cooper's money, $5,800. The serial numbers were a perfect match to the Norjack ransom list. But this discovery only deepened the mystery. Tennebar was miles outside the established jump zone. Forensic hydrologists determined the bundles were found above the river's high water mark, suggesting they hadn't washed ashore, but had been buried or had landed there through some other unknown means. This is the Tennebar hypothesis, and it contradicts the theory that the money simply washed down the river. The FBI's profile of Cooper is a study in contradictions. At first, they believed he must be an experienced paratrooper, but parachuting experts quickly pointed out the flaws. No sane expert would jump at 10,000 feet at night in a 170-knot wind wearing a suit. The most damning clue was the parachute he left behind. He took a fully functional primary parachute, but he paired it with the non-functional, sewn-shut dummy training chute. An expert would have spotted this instantly. An amateur would not. This led to the counter-theory championed by FBI agent Larry Carr in 2007 that Cooper wasn't an expert at all. He was an unrepentant loser, an amateur who had no idea how dangerous the jump truly was, and almost certainly died on impact. Over 800 suspects were investigated and cleared, but a few compelling names always rise to the top. The first is Richard McCoy Jr. Just 5 months after the Cooper hijacking, McCoy, a Vietnam veteran and avid skydiver, hijacked a different Boeing 727, demanded $500,000, and escaped by parachute over Utah in an almost identical crime. The similarity was stunning, and many, including the authors of the book D.B. Cooper, the real McCoy, were convinced. McCoy was caught, convicted, and later killed in a shootout after escaping prison. But the FBI officially ruled him out. The flight attendants insisted McCoy did not match Cooper's physical description or his voice. And most importantly, McCoy had a confirmed alibi for Thanksgiving the day before the Cooper hijacking. A more recent and highly publicized suspect was Robert Rackstraw, a decorated Vietnam helicopter pilot with extensive parachute training and a troubled post-war history, including faking his own death. A team of private investigators led by author Thomas Colbert championed him as the real Cooper for years, fueled by a History Channel special, pointing to his military skills, his physical resemblance, and a supposed confession in coded letters. The FBI, however, repeatedly cleared Rackstraw first in the late 1970s and again in the 2010s. They stated there was no direct evidence linking him to the crime. And in 2019, Robert Rackstraw died, taking any potential secrets with him. The list goes on, a revolving door of compelling stories. There was Sheridan Peterson, a smoke jumper, and, intriguingly, a technical editor at Boeing in Seattle who matched the sketch and loved risk. There was the story of L.D. Cooper, whose niece claimed he showed up at her home the day after the hijacking, bloody and bruised, claiming he'd been in a car accident. And there was Dwayne Weber, a World War II veteran, whose wife claimed that on his deathbed in 1995, he confessed, "I am Dan Cooper." But like all the others, these are compelling human stories that lack the hard, physical evidence needed to close the case. So, did he survive? This is the case's central, unresolved question. The FBI long operated on the assumption that he did not. The conditions were simply non-survivable. The 10,000-foot jump, the 100-mile-per-hour winds, the freezing temperatures, the total darkness. He would have been killed on landing if the cold hadn't killed him first. But there is the money. The $5,800 found at Tenabar. The bundles were found mostly intact, suggesting they didn't just fall from the sky. This is the case's great contradiction. To die seems certain, but to have left that money seems to imply survival. In July 2016, after 45 years, the FBI's Seattle field office officially announced it was closing the active D.B. Cooper investigation. The Norjack case was administratively closed. The Bureau stated that the resources were better spent on cases with more current and solvable leads and on modern, high-priority counterterrorism tasks. The 60-plus volumes of evidence, the clip-on tie, the parachutes, and the 290 bills are all preserved at FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. The case remains open to be revisited only if specific physical evidence, like the rest of the money or his parachute, should ever emerge from the wilderness. So why, after more than half a century, are we still so fascinated? D.B. Cooper is more than a man. He is a modern myth. He's the ultimate disappearing act. He emerged from the cultural zeitgeist of 1971, a time of deep anti-establishment sentiment, the Vietnam War, and social unrest. He became an instant folk hero, the gentleman bandit who was polite, paid for his drinks, and let every passenger go unharmed. He's an active part of Pacific Northwest folklore, inspiring songs, books, and even an annual CooperCon convention. He was the little guy who beat the system, took their money, and then, in a final act of defiance, simply disappeared. He left us with no answers, only a single, perfect, and enduring question. Who was D.B. Cooper? The legend of D.B. Cooper endures not just because of the daring heist, but because of the blank page he left behind in history. We want to hear your perspective on this unsolved puzzle. Do you believe an amateur could have truly survived that jump into a freezing winter storm, or was the money found at Tenabar simply the debris of a fatal mistake? Please share your insights in the comments below. If this investigation brought value to your intelligence and understanding of the past, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel to support our work. Your engagement helps us continue to provide in-depth perspectives for curious minds. Thanks for digging deeply with us today.